Hi, and welcome to Echelon Capital Markets Q&A video series. My name is Gabriel Gonzalez. I'm a mining analyst at Echelon, and with me today is Zaunscherb, Chairman and CEO of GR Silver, a company that I've been following for some time for the compelling silver precious metal-focused growth and value that it offers. Today, the company is poised to deliver significantly more resource growth at a fraction of the price that the market was paying 18 months ago for less upside. I think it's fair to say that that's a result of a quirk in the way that the current resource estimate for the Plomosas Project was calculated, something that the company is already in the process of remedying. But today's valuation also ignores the significant exploration and resource growth results that the company has also delivered at the San Marcial project. So before we get into the thick of things, let me introduce Eric by asking you to tell us a little bit about your background in the mining and finance world and what attracted you to becoming part of GR Silver.
Hi, Gabriel. Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So, as you said, Eric Zaunscherb, I am the chair and the CEO of GR Silver. I originally was a geologist in the field, and then when I got married and realized I wanted to stay being married, I switched over to being a financial analyst and then spent 34 years and several cycles as a mining analyst, retiring at the end of 2019 as the head of a large brokerage firm's mining equity research team. Then in April of 2000, I had the honor to join the board at GR Silver. It was really an honor in the sense that it's a company that I'd been following for some time. I had a lot of respect for management and the vision that management had in creating the portfolio of properties to create the Plomosas Project, but also the Plomosas Project itself, the quality of the project and the potential of it. So it was great coming on the board. And then in 21, in June, I ended up as chair of the board. And then finally on March 1st, I became the CEO of the company.
Great. Well, it's great to have you with us. The August 2021 resource estimate at the past-producing Plomosas mine has been a big part of why GR Silver is currently so undervalued. Interestingly, I think it provided the ounces that I believe the market was looking for, just not at the expected grade. Can you describe the infill drill program that's been underway to remedy that resource grade and what that means for the next resource estimate?
Absolutely. I think it's important to remember that August 21 resource was focused on the Plomosas mine area. And the Plomosas mine itself was in operation from 1986 to 2001, operated by Grupo Mexico, which, as you know, Gabriel, is a base metal miner. And the interesting thing is that during that time, as base metal miners, the geologists focused on base metal minerals. So where they saw the sulfides, specifically sphalerite and galena, zinc and lead respectively, they sampled. And so there were a lot of holes that were drilled and then sampled selectively, which therefore missed a lot of the precious metal mineralization. Although the main hydrothermal breccia, the main body in the mine is a polymetallic hydrothermal breccia, and there are some indications that cross structures, younger structures that came later, tended to increase the silver and gold content. And so that was largely missed. So when we incorporated over 500 drill holes into the database to create that first ever resource for the Plomosas mine area, that did not include some of the samples that would have been great to have there. And so consequently, the grade was suppressed. The grade was correctly done. The QP did the right thing, and obviously you're not going to include samples that don't exist. And so consequently, the result is an average grade of around 45 grams per ton silver, which, as we all know, is not economic. That had a very negative impact on the company, on its share price. But when one compares that to the average mined grade of 190 grams per ton silver plus 0.96 grams per ton gold, there's a big difference there. And that difference is reflected in the fact that there were samples not taken. And so holes included that had not been sampled. So what's the remedy? Getting to the meat of your question, is that we immediately embarked upon an infill drill program, very targeted, very surgical in its definition, the mine area already has 7.4 kilometers of underground development, right? So that allows one to get in there into the deposit and do very short holes that are targeted at addressing those zero grade sampled areas. And so we have now completed, well, by the end of September, as we have announced, we completed, it was 126 surface and underground holes for a total of around 5,700 meters. So obviously we'll have added to that since the end of September. We've published some very, very impressive infill results in areas that were supposed to be at zero or low grade, things like, for example, 12.5 meters, grading 1,146 grams per ton silver equivalent rather. So that's been very effective, this program. So we're very excited to see what the resource update will bring.
And I think just for the history buffs out there, when Grupo Mexico was mining this project, the price of gold and silver were nowhere near where they are today. I think gold was around $300, so there was probably even less incentive for them to want to sample for those gold and silver values. I think from what you're telling me, it's also fair to say that the Plomosas Mine breccia and other features provide additional growth potential beyond just the improved grade profile, with also potential very nearby exploration targets.
That's true. When I came in March as the CEO, one of the important catchwords was focus. And the focus is to deliver resource updates at Plomosas and on San Marcial, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. I would say that an important word to focus on right now is cross-structure. And by that, I mean that the main hydrothermal breccia carries on to the northwest. And it's been clear that these cross-structures, whether they're east-west or northeast-southwest, are these secondary and tertiary structures that are enhancing grade in terms of precious metals. And so we're seeing cross structures where we're pulling grades, for example, intercepts like 44.5 meters, grading 518 grams per ton silver. So these very nice high-grade hits we're getting in newly discovered footwall and hanging wall zones outside of the main hydrothermal breccia. And in the past, for the base metal miner, that was just noise outside of the main body. But with the detailed work that we're doing, with the 3D modeling that's going on, the fantastic work that Marcio and the geological team are doing, that is allowing us to identify these newly identified structures that are lining up quite nicely, and we are demonstrating continuity, and they will be contributing to the resource update in the first quarter of 23.
Great. And arguably, in my opinion, one of the most important developments at the Plomosas project has also been this year's San Marcial discoveries, specifically the San Marcial underground and the new southeast zone. Do you think that the company was expecting so much success at San Marcial?
It's always hard to know what the market is looking for. From our perspective, we've been signaling for quite a while that this is not just surface enrichment. I know when we published in 2019 a resource based on 52 holes, a resource at San Marcial, the first one, that there were those that were viewing it as being surface enrichment. And we very clearly did some studies in structural geology that were suggesting that there should be some potential roots to that. So at the end of 21, we had looked at an old adit that provided underground access to the San Marcial deposit at depth. And we drilled 8 holes, and we had a great deal of success there in delivering some very nice high grade. For example, hole 2103, which delivered 18 meters of 773 grams silver, and I emphasize silver, not silver equivalent, including 5.6 meters of 1.8 kilos of silver. And so there's some very nice high grade at depth extending below San Marcial. So we weren't surprised necessarily that there was mineralization, but pleasantly surprised at the high grade nature of that mineralization. Then the next thing we did is that as we're peeling the geological onion and understanding the mineralization at San Marcial, is the recognition that San Marcial lives at the contact between the upper volcanics and a lower volcanosedimentary package. And that this important contact runs off further to the southeast from San Marcial. So we reasoned that there was an opportunity there to do further exploration to see if there's more mineralization along contact. And so one of the first things, there's extensive geophysical program highlighting very interesting looking anomaly. In addition, there was some lithogeochemical work that was done, 14,000 samples taken on a 25 by 25 meter grid, which highlighted some very attractive, 7 specifically, silver anomalies at surface. And of course, some of those things can be representative of leakage from something further at depth. So when we looked at that contact and saw, as we went to the southeast, a deflection in that contact, that's always something that makes geologists salivate when they see a deflection like that. It identified what now turns out to be a structural corridor. Again, one of these important northeast trending structures. And it was that location that was decided to put a hole in, and a blind discovery was made of 101.6 meters of 308 grams per ton silver. And again, silver. So San Marcial is highlighted by these high grades over very significant widths of silver mineralization. So that is an important discovery that surprised us to the extent that, again, high grade and high silver component. Whether the market found it interesting or not, I'm not too sure, but I can say that in July, we were trading at 47 cents US per ounce M plus I in the ground. And the peers, that would have been about a 75% discount relative to the peers. And again, we talked about why the discount is there from the disappointment related to the grade at Plomosas. Since that time, you could say that the peers are flat in terms of their valuation, M plus I, enterprise value per ounce in the ground. And we have more than doubled. We're now trading at over $1 in terms of ounce in the ground. And that's great to see that the market is valuing us at a higher level than they were in the past. Perhaps that's evidence that we have surprised people to the upside on the grade there.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think what's coming in terms of the company working on releasing a combined resource estimate, combining Plomosas and San Marcial will also help a lot. Given though that the two areas, different styles of mineralization are a little bit different one from the other, is this setting up the company to pave the way for an integrated development path, considering both Plomosas and San Marcial together?
Well, the first step is delivering the two resource updates, or the resource update integrated for both areas, for the mine area, Plomosas Mine area, and for San Marcial. So that'll be done in the first quarter. We're on track to deliver that as we've promised, and we have good expectations in terms of what the number of ounces will be, and in terms of the grade there, and then ultimately how the market will value those ounces. Now, in terms of what the next step is, that depends on what we get. If we get what we hope, i.e. higher grade, more attractive, more economically realistic, then the next logical step would be an integrated PEA. And so that's to be determined after the resource is delivered. But a PEA would, in my opinion, at least at this point, combine the two operations or the two locations to see what the best way of approaching it is. You mentioned that they are different. Yes, indeed they are. Plomosas is a polymetallic with about 55, 60, maybe 65% of the value in precious metals. In the past, it was processed in a flotation circuit, whereas San Marcial is, you're looking at 90 to 93% in our preliminary work, silver recovery. Fantastic. So that's just straight leaching. So we'll see what the optimum process might be for those two.
Okay. And Mexico has become a bit more complicated in terms of moving projects forward in the last couple of years, particularly those with an open pit component. Despite this, Plomosas already has a number of permits already in place, given that it was previously in production, and a significant amount of infrastructure as well, which many investors, I think, might not appreciate. They may think that GRSL is really just a grassroots exploration company, but that existing infrastructure, I think, is a real interesting twist on the story. Can you describe the advantages that this existing infrastructure gives you relative to other newer, just greenfield type exploration companies?
Absolutely. Start off with access, right? One flies into Mazatlan, a resort city, drives for about 45 minutes on a toll highway to El Rosario. El Rosario district has been mining for over 250 years. And so the mining is in the DNA of the local people. There's well-educated, well-trained people, all kinds of support services. Then one drives about an hour and a half by dirt road to get into the project in the various areas. And with two former producers there are, importantly, these are mining concessions. So it is permitted for mining, not for just exploration, but already for mining. So that's a huge time saver and de-risking element to this. As two former producers, we also have power direct to site, existing accommodations. The Perleras camp in relation to the Plomosas mine has the capacity to house 190 people. And so we have fully renovated that camp from decades ago. It is a great place to live and to work with full cafeteria. It's all set out beautifully to work. That's one other aspect. And then in terms of other important aspects, there are 3 ejidos or agricultural co-ops in the area that are impacted by the entire project. And we have strong relationships with those ejidos, existing agreements. So it's a big de-risking element and potentially a significant savings on the timeline as well going forward.
Definitely. I recall that I was at the project about a year ago, and I was very much impressed with the infrastructure, the camp, the team, and everything that has a company set up, I think, for a lot of success. And also the nearby town, you could tell that it's been very much an important part of the Plomosas district for a long time. I would also add that a lot of the surface looking geology was particularly impressive. This is very much a highly altered, very geologically interesting area. Getting back to the discussion about the community, environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, is becoming an increasingly important element that investors look at, and particularly it's relevant to mining. For many years, Mexico has already been awarding recognition for socially responsible mining. But Eric, can you describe a little bit what GR Silver does or has in mind in terms of ESG, and what further opportunities and challenges there are available to the company in ESG?
Well, ESG, you're right, is something that's becoming more and more important, and I fear that many parties have overblown what they're doing, and the term for it, I guess, is greenwashing. We are at the beginning of our journey. There's so much more that we can do, but there's a lot that we have done that we haven't really celebrated and formalized. And in terms of environment, for example, we're very strict in our protocols. On the social side, I already mentioned how the camp has been greatly improved and people love to work there. On the health side, we were able to work through the COVID pandemic as a result of the strict protocols that we had. So in other words, and we still do it, everyone who visits the site has to test negative for COVID, otherwise they can't get to site. Number 2 is that when you're on site, before every meal, your temperature is taken. And if you're running a fever, you're isolated. We have 2 nurses on staff and an ambulance. We have 2 full-time safety people, 1 for each of the underground projects. And so health and safety and the well-being of our employees and contractors is extremely important. And you can't operate anywhere without having that kind of an attitude. So we value the people we work with, we value our neighbors, and I feel that they value us as a result of that. It extends to that. In terms of the schools, we have programs that we've funded and participated in with regard to deforestation, for example, and had people out planting trees. So it's all extremely, extremely important. In terms of the future, well, we hope to be working towards that PEA. We'll see about a decision later, but we hope to be working towards that PEA in 23, which would then lead to the next level and so on and so forth. If we end up getting back into production, we think that we've established a great base there for that ESG component. It's extremely important, whether you're in Mexico or in Quebec or Africa, it doesn't matter. You still have to do things the right way.
Alluding back to that trip that I made about a year ago to the project, I really noted that the state of Sinaloa has made significant strides in developing infrastructure, connecting the states to other parts of the country and cementing a government presence there where there previously was none. Do you think that that's something that investors are starting to catch up on in terms of where Sinaloa is and challenging some of the perceptions that people have had about the state in the past?
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point. When I'm marketing and talking to investors, potential investors, shareholders, one of the first questions that we get, obviously, is Sinaloa. What's Sinaloa like? How can you work there? Is it secure and all that sort of thing? We've been working there for a long time and have absolutely no issues whatsoever from a security perspective. And a big part of that is having that strong relationship with the community. So when people visit, much as you noted when you visited, it's a great place to work. One flies into Mazatlan, as I said earlier, one drives on a toll highway for 45 minutes, and then it's a dirt road access. So the access is great. And you might have noticed when you drove in that there was a large dam that's going in partway into towards the property, not near the property, but on the way. And so the power infrastructure is being improved. And this is an important project to the federal administration. On the state side, we have regular meetings with state officials, and the relationship is very, very positive. There's nothing else going on in the region around the project. There's the agricultural, the subsistence level. There's no narcotics being grown there. And so mining is, as I mentioned, in the blood of the people for centuries. And so mining is the opportunity to prime the economic pump in the region. And so I think that's recognized by the state and by the federal government. And so there is encouragement to move forward on that basis.
So I think it's fair to say that with all the points that you've touched on in terms of the infrastructure and the geological potential that you've also described, the company is really set up for a great deal of success over the coming years. That said, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us about the project, about the company, and where you'd like to see things going?
Well, I think the very first thing is that we're going to see news flow going into the new year. As we wrap up our drill program in December, the assay turnaround time is vastly improved. It was 7 or 8 weeks in the summer. It's now down to 3 or 4 weeks. So in January, we will have all of our assays. That means that we can put all of that data into the resource updates. We will have that resource update out in the first quarter as promised. So GR Silver is a company that will deliver according to its promises. Then when we have those resource updates, we expect a re-rating that will reflect the number of ounces and the grade that's attractive, that's potentially economic. Then we'll be allowed to focus on the next step, whether that's a PEA or not. That'll be determined by the result of that resource update. So I think we are on track to have a growing number of ounces, have growing resources to the benefit of obviously the shareholder, but also our stakeholders, our community, our home jurisdiction. So we're excited about where the company is going, and we have the right combination of project and people, place and price to make an attractive investment opportunity.
So thank you very much for sharing your time with us, Eric. We're looking forward to the upcoming project resource estimate and the growth potential that I think the company is set to deliver.
It's a real pleasure working with you, Gabriel, on this, and we really have appreciated your support as well as the support of Echelon.
For our viewers, I'd like to invite you to check out Echelon's other Q&A videos that also span the mining, technology, and other sectors with company and sector thought leaders. Thank you very much for being with us.